Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, we all strive for optimal performance, that feeling when we're in the zone and our productivity levels are maximised. However, all too often in business, daily distractions prohibit us from achieving such performance. But my first guest, Rian Doris from the Flow Research Collective, joins me now to discuss how entrepreneurs can achieve their flow state and improve their productivity. Rian, before we discuss the flow state, tell us a bit about your own background.
Sure, yeah. So I went to Trinity College there in Dublin. Before that, I went to school in Blackrock, and I studied and majored in philosophy, funnily enough. And then I'm about halfway through a master's in applied neuroscience in King's College London, and my focus work-wise has been in leadership development. And that's a version of what we're doing now at the Flow Research Collective.
So Steven Kotler is one of the world's leading experts on high performance. So how did the opportunity arise for you to work with Steven?
Yeah, so back when I was in Trinity as a student, I was a fan of Steven's. I'd read all of his books like Bold and Abundance and thought they were amazing. Followed him on Facebook and social media. And he put up a Facebook status asking for interns. I was about 20 at the time, and I actually just literally sent him a Facebook message. Started working with him remote. Gradually scaled up my portfolio of work. Obviously went over and met him in person. Began working more and more with him, kind of became his right hand. And then, the timing all aligned about 4 years later with the founding of the new company together.
And what have you learned from Steven over the years?
That's a big question. All sorts. I would say the biggest thing would be mindset oriented. So just an expanded sense of what's possible. You know, when you're around people like Steven and people like who Steven associates with, who are just doing huge things and thinking in huge ways and just kind of going after it, it really expands what you believe is possible for yourself in a way that I think is very helpful.
And how does Steven think differently to the rest of us?
I think I always bring it back to growth mindset or having an internal locus of control is sort of a technical way to describe it, which is basically just this sense that, you know, anything is possible so long as you figure out what the steps required are to go after it and achieve it, and then just execute against those steps.
Now, the reason I've asked you to join us on this morning's programme is to discuss the Flow Research Collective. So what's that all about?
Sure, yeah. So we're a research and training institute. So on the research side, we're partnered with universities like Imperial College London, UCLA, USC, and a number of others doing research into the neuroscience of peak performance focused on flow state. And then on the training side, we use what we learn in our research to work with entrepreneurs and executive teams, teaching them how to reduce stress, overwhelm, and burnout, and improve their performance in the workplace and in life in general.
So what process do you bring those burnt out executives through?
Sure. So we've got a team of peak performance coaches. All of our coaches are either psychologists or neuroscientists. So whenever a client starts working with us, we pair them with one of our coaches, and they'll work with a coach usually over a beginning period of about 8 weeks through one-on-one sessions, and then they'll consume content from us to learn about, you know, how to improve their performance, all the maps and models and things like that we teach. And then in addition to that, we put them in an app that has prompts for behavioral change and habit tracking and things like that. So they're doing this sort of hybridized program that combines one-on-one coaching for, you know, deep dives for big personal insights, along with an upgrade in their habits and their day-to-day behaviors, along with, you know, learning and absorbing content about how to level up and improve their performance overall.
And from your experience, Rian, what is the root cause of burnout in both entrepreneurs and executives?
I would say the biggest thing that people underestimate and leave out is recovery. So the focus is usually always around work and doing more and working more hours and working better within the hours that people are working. But people just leave out the other side of the equation, which is recovery. So we teach active recovery. So, you're probably familiar with this from sports in that passive recovery involves just, resting or not doing anything essentially that accelerates the recovery process, while active recovery involves taking active steps to do things that accelerate the recovery process. And most executives and most entrepreneurs do not have an active recovery routine. So we have people begin to treat themselves as corporate athletes, is what we call it, where they really start taking their own health and recovery as seriously as a professional athlete would.
So what does the active recovery routine look like?
I mean, it depends on every individual. Every individual has to define what may be best for themselves in terms of an active recovery protocol. But things that we recommend are, things like saunas. Obviously, exercise in general is good. Cold therapy, so ice baths and things like that can be really good. Mindfulness and meditation can be great. Basically, you want anything that kind of shifts your state of consciousness and gives your nervous system sort of a reboot and a reset.
One of the core principles behind your program is flow science. What is it and what benefits can it bring?
Sure, yes. The flow state is a state of consciousness that everyone, including all the listeners, have experienced, one time or another. People usually refer to it as being in the zone or getting in state or getting in the groove or, whatever the case may be. But it's basically that state of total and utter absorption in whatever it is that you're doing, where time passes strangely. Oftentimes it'll speed up and hours will go by in what feels like minutes, or sometimes it'll actually slow down. But it's basically that state of hyper-focus where you're totally lost in what it is that you're doing, where the whole world kind of melts away and everything disappears behind you while you're just completely immersed in what you're doing. So that's what a flow state is, and there are all sorts of enormous performance enhancements that are associated with being in that state. So we teach people how to get themselves into that state of flow, and then how to maintain it for as long as possible, with the goal being ideally that, people are spending 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day deeply in the zone.
And from a practical perspective, how can entrepreneurs bring themselves into that flow state?
Yeah, so I would say the best place to start is actually with removing the things that are going to be getting you out of flow. So usually people are subject to incessant, constant distraction. So, people will have their phones on, they'll be checking email. So the first step, which is super simple, is just blocking out hours and hours where you are completely protected from distractions and where you just have open space to be able to focus deeply on one singular thing for hours on end.
Now that sounds easy, but in practice probably a very difficult thing to do because we do live in a world of mass distraction.
Yeah, for sure, exactly. There's research from Gallup that shows that on average in an 8-hour workday, most workers work, I think it's 2.3 hours a day. So that's what the average looks like because of the incessant, constant distraction.
Talk to us about some of the organisations that the Flow Research Collective has worked with to date and the results which it has delivered for them.
Sure. So on the training side, Steven's worked with Google. They saw an 80% improvement in the amount of flow state that the executives at Google were experiencing. Steven's also done work with the U.S. Navy SEALs, and then with, lots of other big organizations like Morgan Stanley and Deloitte and things like that. And then on the research side, we're doing research into the relationship between flow states and psychedelic states with Imperial College London. We're looking at flow and business success in a big study with Deloitte. And that's interesting as well, to be able to look at the impact of time spent in flow on executives' overall, performance and business success across their career.
And I'm interested to find out, how are you measuring flow?
It's a great question. So there's a number of academically validated psychometric assessments that you can take to measure flow. They're literally self-report questionnaires, but they have been they've been validated by a psychologist called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who people may know of. He's a Hungarian psychologist at Claremont Graduate University out here in California. And he coined the term flow, and he developed these measures of flow. And they can give you a pretty good read of the degree to which people are, actually getting into flow and spending time in the zone.
And what are the other key ingredients for achieving high performance within an organisation?
Within an organization, again, I think a lot of it comes down to autonomy. If you are micromanaging, if you're demanding that your workers follow a very set schedule that they have not set for themselves, if they feel as if they don't have any control or say over what it is that they're doing or how they're doing it, oftentimes, at a simple level, that's going to damage their performance because they're not going to be able to work during the times or in the ways that they know they individually work best. But then also what it's going to do is decrease engagement, decrease motivation, suppress creativity, and a number of other things that a lack of autonomy ends up doing.
And of course, with the growth in remote working globally, it's never been as important to be able to measure the effectiveness and efficiency of staff. So how relevant is the flow state to working remotely?
Yeah, I think there's lots of overlap there. One is that we recommend allowing your employees to work remotely if they want. And so long as you have a good performance management system in place, and so long as you've got, OKRs or KPIs set within your organization so that you can measure the actual performance and output of your employees, our attitude and what we teach is that how they produce that output or how they perform shouldn't matter.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Rian Doris from the Flow Research Collective, and I would like to thank Rian for sharing his insights into achieving peak performance with us this morning.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.